Hey man, did you bring the goods?
Of course.
Hey, turn that camera off! Anyways, today we're going to be talking about the Investigator class in Pathfinder 2e on this episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello travelers and tourists, my name is Mark and I am the Local Disaster Tour Guide. That's right, I'm a storyteller who's got a plan. And that plan is... run away! Run away very quickly. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder. Today we are returning to my classic introduction series, where I take a look at the different classes in Pathfinder 2e and examine what they offer players who would be interested in that class at the gaming table. And today, well, it's time. I'm going to talk about the Investigator, a class that may come with a little controversy on this channel. You see, famously in some of my videos ranking the different classes in Pathfinder 2e, I have said things like, I wish the Investigator was an archetype, or I have ranked the class pretty low compared to other classes inside of the game. And some people in my community have stepped up and spoken up in defense of the Investigator class. There have been a lot of conversations around the Investigator, and you know what? Maybe the time has come for me to stop trying to generate internet controversy and feed the algorithm by relentlessly trolling Investigator fans through my YouTube channel. Because, you know, Secrets of Magic is out now, and that means it's a lot more timely if I decided to troll the Summoner fans instead. Now, in all seriousness, Investigator is one of those classes that I struggle with a little bit in terms of its place in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I have said many times that while I appreciate the Investigator concept, it feels like a concept that fits better in games like Call of Cthulhu than it does Pathfinder, and that just leads to some hesitation for me. But I do want to take some time to give the class a fair shake, to give the class a fair look, and see what this class does bring to the table. I do realize that there are a lot of people out there who would be interested in the Investigator style concept, and now that I have dug into the class a little bit, I will admit that I have been surprised by the quality of several of the mechanics that Paizo has introduced with this class, and I do think that there are some interesting concepts here, so today I would like to explore them. And let me just say thank you to everyone who is part of this community who is willing to engage in conversations with me, because I have learned a lot about the Investigator and other classes inside of the game from your feedback, from the comments you leave on my channel, from those of you who are participating in my Discord community. And this is called a subtle transition to all of the YouTube stuff. Yes, that's right. Your engagement is important with this channel, not just because it feeds the YouTube algorithm, but also because it helps me to learn and grow as a YouTube content creator. So, do all of the YouTube stuff. If you enjoy the video, leave a like, share the video, definitely comment with your insights and ideas, and check out my free Discord community, or if you're interested in supporting the channel, check out my Patreon as well. Those links are in the video description down below. The video description will also contain a link to today's sponsor, ArcKnight. So I want to give a huge shout out to the sponsor of today's video, ArcKnight. ArcKnight is a Texas-based company that makes beautiful and durable die-cut plastic accessories for TTRPGs, such as flat plastic minis, object sheets, spell templates, and the number one reason they keep getting a lot of my money, RPG maps. ArcKnight sells a number of double-sided map packs that you can use for your TTRPGs that come with different themes such as wilderness or planar settings, or as you can see here, the Greystone Castle pack. Let's bust out these maps on the table and show you what they look like. So really quick, I'm going to show you one of the sample layouts that they give you for the Greystone Citadel. As you can see here, you have a moat and an entrance area. You have some basic fortifications for the castle, and even a throne room for your players to enter. Now the next thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to step back a bit. This is one of my old RPG maps, and you see the standard folds, crinkles, creases, and other wear and tear that is associated with your standard RPG map. But as you can see, my maps from ArcKnight are actually much flatter and in better condition, and the reason is these maps don't fold, they just store as is. This leads to a more durable product that gets less wear and tear as it ages. Also, I would like to zoom in and show you something really cool about ArcKnight's maps. As you can see here, I am one of those weird storytellers that likes to use hex grids instead of square grids. And the cool thing about ArcKnight's maps is you can custom order these maps in whatever type of grid you prefer. Do you prefer the normal square grids? You can order it that way. Do you want to custom order all of their maps with hex grids like I did? That's a possibility. And even though I don't have an example here, you can also order their maps completely gridless if that's your preferred playstyle. And to give you one more sample of what ArcKnight maps look like, here is a recent construction that I used in one of my games to create a tavern for my players to explore. As you can see, the map is colorful, has light sources indicated, and once again, allow me to point out that they allowed me to order it with a custom hex grid to fit my group's gaming style. So that's just a sample of the many different maps that ArcKnight offers. I love that these maps are beautiful, that they're durable, and very easy to store. These simple plastic sleeves tuck very neatly beside my computer desk and are very easy to store and access for my games. I really appreciate the fact that ArcKnight develops products that are easy to store as a game master, meaning that I have more room for, well, all of the other stuff in my gaming space. One last thing I'd like to say about ArcKnight is the incredible respect that I have for their team. I have been a customer of ArcKnight for years, backing many of their Kickstarters, even talking to them at Gen Con, and I have placed many orders with this company. And on the single occasion that there was an error with one of my orders, their customer service team worked quickly and efficiently to get that order fixed and sent back out to me. I'm impressed by their professionalism and by the quality of products and services they provide. So if you want to check them out, I encourage you to check out the link to their website in the video description. And thank you again, ArcKnight, for sponsoring this video. Alright, so the time has come to dive in to the Investigator class, and in this series, we like to examine each class through the lens of 5 specific questions. Number 1, what is the Investigator? Number 2, what class options does the Investigator present? Number 3, what are the strengths of the Investigator? Number 4, what are the weaknesses of the Investigator? And number 5, how can I get the most out of the Investigator in play? By the way, you may notice that the order of the questions has switched around a little bit for this video. I moved up the class options for the Investigator to question number 2 because, honestly, I feel like we need to discuss those to make the conversations around strengths and weaknesses make more sense. So hopefully you'll forgive that slight change in the order for this video, but let's get started. Okay, so for the first question in this series, we always ask, what is a particular class? What is the Investigator? If you are a new player who is approaching this class and trying to understand what this class is and what this class does, what do you need to know? And we break this part of the conversation into 3 subsections. The first is, what is the class role of the Investigator? Second is, how complex is the Investigator to play? And third, what are the key terms or concepts that you need to be aware of if you're going to play an Investigator? And, spoiler alert, oh boy, there's a lot here. Alright, first sub-question. What is the class role of the investigator? In an answer that feels way too long, allow me to say, the investigator is an intelligence-based, social skill-focused martial class. Did Paizo go overboard here? Okay, so let's talk about that for a moment. First off, martial class means that basically the investigator is not a spellcaster. You're not dealing with magic and traditions and components and all of the things that go into the complexities of spellcasting in Pathfinder 2e. This is a class that's going to deal their damage using regular weapons inside the fight and employing unique strategies in combat. However, you may notice that unlike a fighter or a barbarian or a ranger, the investigator isn't strength or dexterity based, but rather they are an intelligence-based class. This is a class that doesn't rely on raw power or superhuman dexterity to win the day inside of a fight, but rather they rely on a sharp wit and a keen tactical intellect to overcome their enemies. The investigator may not hit as hard or be as agile as their allies, but their ability to spot and maximize an advantage is going to help them carry the day. This focus on intelligence carries over to the investigator's skills, and the investigator ends up mirroring the rogue in that they are kind of a skill monkey inside of Pathfinder 2e. The investigator is one of the strongest skill classes inside of the game, though as we talk about the class, one of the things you're going to see is the investigator pushes more towards mental and social skills rather than physical skills, which will help to differentiate the investigator from other skill-focused classes inside the game. Okay, so with everything I just said on the subject of class role, it probably should not surprise you that I'm going to be giving the investigator a pretty high overall complexity when it comes to playing one inside of Pathfinder 2e. I give the investigator an overall complexity rating of 8 out of 10. Which is a little bit higher than I would actually rank the fighter, and is comparable to many of the spellcasting classes inside of the game. Let's just be honest here, the investigator is one of those classes that is going to be complex to play, though I think it is worth saying that if you are interested in playing an investigator, you are probably interested in that more complex play style. This is a class that I think appeals to people who enjoy a very specific play style, so don't let that high complexity rating necessarily turn you off of this class. In fact, as I say in every video in this series, complexity rating should never be viewed as a reason to avoid a certain class. Over many years of storytelling games, I can tell you that player interest will always outweigh the complexity of a given class or a given playstyle. If you are interested in the investigator, that enthusiasm is going to carry you through any complexities of learning how to play the class. I do think the investigator is complex, but if you're interested in it, I think it is certainly manageable. And I'll go ahead and say that the investigator is a complex class to play because it is stealthily one of the most flexible classes in this game. Yeah, we're going to get into that. It's one of the things that surprised me when I started studying up on the investigator, but the investigator is actually a very flexible class, but that means that if you want to manage your investigator well, you need to be prepared for that flexible playstyle, and that flexible playstyle is going to show up especially in combat, so the ability to think quickly and adapt your plans to the circumstances that come up, that's going to be critical in finding success with this class, so just be prepared for that in play. Our final sub-question in this first category is, what are the key terms and concepts that you need to be aware of when playing an investigator in Pathfinder 2e? Every class in Pathfinder 2e comes with this handy sidebar explaining the important key terms and definitions that you need to be aware of if you're going to play that particular class. And the Advanced Player's Guide has no sidebar for the investigator, which is a dirty lie. Listen, I am serious about this. Paizo, not having a sidebar for the complexity of the investigator is totally short-selling what players need to be aware of if they are going to play an investigator. There are no key terms for the Investigator class, but we're going to go over some things I think you need to be aware of. First off, let's talk about Investigator weapon choices. As an Investigator, you want to deal with weapons that would be considered lighter, easier to use weapons, so you're going to be looking for weapons that have the Agile or Finesse trait if you're dealing with melee weapons, and if you deal with thrown weapons, you still want to be checking for thrown weapons that have the Agile and Finesse trait. A lot of Investigator abilities assume that you are using weapons that are either Agile or Finesse weapons. So, selecting the right gear is one of these small, subtle nuances of this class that could be easy to overlook if you weren't paying attention. On top of that, there are 4 different abilities at first level that are key to how you're going to play the Investigator, and I feel like we need to talk about all 4 of them if you want to have a good grasp of what this class can do. Those abilities are Pursue a Lead, Clue In, Devise a Stratagem, and Strategic Strike. So the first 2 abilities that you're going to get come from an Investigator ability called On the Case, which splits into 2 different options, which are Pursue a Lead and Clue In. Pursue a Lead is kind of the core of the Investigator class. It represents your Investigator honing in on a particular mystery, a particular topic, a particular thing that they are trying to unravel or solve or just figure out what's going on. Maybe your character finds a mysterious set of footprints in the mud. Or maybe you happen upon a crime scene and you're investigating a dead body. The Pursue a Lead ability represents your character focusing in on these questions and trying to figure out what's going on with these different cases that you've encountered. You can use the Pursue a Lead activity once every 10 minutes, and it takes 1 minute to begin pursuing a lead. So this is typically going to happen when you first arrive at a crime scene or the site of a particular mystery. You will spend some time examining the area, and you will begin to question some aspect of what you're seeing. You may ask the question, whose footprints are these? Or, what was the murder weapon that was used on this person? Or maybe, how did this individual die in the first place? Was it poison, magic, or something even more nefarious? Functionally, you will focus in on one particular aspect of a given scene, and you will state that that is a lead that you are attempting to follow. Mechanically, what this does is it gives you a +1 bonus on perception checks and relevant skill checks to, well, pursue that lead. The game does note that the skills that are appropriate to pursuing a lead are going to be different from, well, case to case. So it's ultimately going to be up to Game Master discretion what skills are going to be appropriate to pursuing a lead, but the book does note that it's typically going to cover intelligence, wisdom, or charisma-based skills that are related to following that lead. So, for example, if you're investigating a murder, perception checks to follow a trail or diplomacy checks to ask questions about suspects could reasonably gain that bonus. It is worth noting that the Pursue a Lead activity does have the Concentrate trait, so you will not be able to use it in situations where you're not able to maintain your focus. Also, as a final limit, you can have a maximum of 2 leads at any given time, and if you would gain a 3rd lead, you have to let go of one of the previous leads that you were following. The second ability that you pick up from On the Case is called Clue In, and this is a reaction that you can use once every 10 minutes to grant your Pursue a Lead bonus to an ally who is attempting to investigate the same lead that you are. If you have an ally who is assisting you in the investigation or pursuing the same target in one way or another, you can essentially, once per 10 minutes, pass that bonus to them. This action will probably have the auditory or visual trait, depending on how you're helping your ally with their investigation, but this is functionally a very quick and easy version of the aid action that you can pass out once every 10 minutes for free. So I do think it's a pretty strong option. Okay, so those are abilities that are typically going to be used outside of combat. What can investigators do inside of combat? Well, they can devise a stratagem. So the devise a stratagem ability requires you to spend one action picking a target and making a plan of attack for that target. As a part of making this plan, You roll a d20, and if you attack that target later in the round, your first strike against that target uses the outcome of whatever your d20 roll was. Also, when you strike that particular target, you will use your intelligence modifier rather than your strength or dexterity modifier with whatever type of weapon you are wielding. Since the Investigator is an intelligence-focused class, essentially it is making that particular strike more accurate because you're using your tactical acumen to guide the outcome of the strike. Now, it is worth noting that agile and finesse weapons are required for melee weapons that are used in association with Devise a Stratagem, so you're not going to be able to deploy heavier weapons when using this ability, but it can still be a pretty potent bonus. One more mechanical note about Devise a Stratagem: you can use Devise a Stratagem as a free action if you know that you are using it against the target of your Pursue a Lead ability. So if you've been chasing down a killer and you've got them cornered and the time has come to battle them, you can, as a free action, devise a stratagem against them every single round. Now, it might seem a little bit weird to roll a dice and then decide whether or not you're going to attack a particular target, but what this does for the Investigator is it essentially makes your turns a little more flexible. We'll talk about this in depth in the strength section of this video, but for the moment, think of it this way. You pick a target, you make a plan, you roll the dice, and you get to know immediately whether or not this is a good plan. Maybe you roll the dice and it comes up really high, 18, 19, maybe a natural 20, and you know that you have guaranteed success if you go after that target. Conversely, maybe you roll poorly, a 1, a 2, or a 3, and you know that running in and engaging with that enemy is going to put you at a severe disadvantage. There are actions inside of the game, such as shove or trip or especially disarm, where the degree of success is very important, and knowing ahead of time what your role would be can really save you from pursuing actions or activities that could potentially waste your turn. So if you want to, think of Devise a Stratagem as turn insurance. If the dice roll is bad, you can abandon that plan and still potentially get a couple of decent actions out of your turn. The last ability that investigators are going to pick up at first level is called Strategic Strike, and basically what this does is it's sort of like sneak attack that comes from studying people really carefully. When you use Devise a Stratagem against a target, you can deal extra precision damage against them, and it doesn't matter if your target is flat-footed or not. The only thing that is important in adding this damage is that you took the time to plan out your attack. Okay, so those are the 4 core abilities of the Investigator: Pursue a Lead, Clue In, Devise a Stratagem, and Strategic Strike. Understanding those 4 abilities is going to be core to really getting the most out of the Investigator class, and I do think that these are key concepts you really want to know and focus on if you're going to play an Investigator. But hey, why should we stop the complexity train just because we left the first question in this series? It's time to move on to the second question, which are, what are the options that the Investigator presents for players who are interested in the class? It's time to talk about the subclasses for the Investigator, and let's go ahead and be honest here, this is just going to add to the complexity that we've already been talking about. At present, there are 4 subclasses or methodologies that the Investigator can pick from, and this represents the way that your character goes about their investigations, the way that you go about trying to solve mysteries or solve crimes. Your options are Alchemical Sciences, Empiricism, Forensic Medicine, and Interrogation. First up is the Alchemical Sciences Methodology. And the best way to describe this particular methodology is it turns the Investigator into a light version of the alchemist in addition to their regular investigator skill set. Much like an alchemist, you will be trained in crafting, and you will also get the alchemical crafting skill feat. You will get a formula book at first level, and you will even get 2 bonus formulas that must be either alchemical elixirs or alchemical tools to add to that formula book. This, by the way, is going to reveal one of the key differences between the alchemist class and the Alchemical Sciences Investigator. The Alchemical Sciences Investigator focuses very heavily on elixirs and tools and doesn't have nearly as many options when it comes to bombs or mutagens. The Alchemical Sciences Investigator is going to pick up an ability called Quick Tincture, where they get the ability to create a number of versatile vials every day equal to their intelligence modifier, which they can use to turn into an alchemical elixir or tool of their choice. Essentially, it is a lesser version of the Quick Alchemy ability, but they can only use it to rapidly create elixirs or tools. Now, if you know anything about alchemy in Pathfinder 2e, I swear I'm going to do the Alchemist video eventually, you would know that only accessing elixirs and tools is still going to give the investigator a lot of options. I mean, if nothing else, you can still make sovereign glue. So while it is limited compared to the Alchemist, you're still going to have a lot of good options here. And I do want to stress, Alchemical Sciences Investigators can still make bombs and mutagens through the crafting skill, they just can't use it with Quick Tincture. So if you see your investigator as a man of science mixing strange compounds and using his formulas to test the world around him, Alchemical Sciences could be right for you. The next methodology available to investigators is the Empiricism Methodology, which represents a focus on data, on facts, on analyzing the numbers and drawing the logical conclusions. Mechanically, I feel like the best description of the Empiricism Methodology is it is the most flexible methodology, and it takes the most flexible approach of any subclass in how you overcome problems. This methodology will allow you to pick any one intelligence-based skill to be trained at first level, and you will also pick up the That's Odd Investigator feat, which basically functions as a free clue every time you walk into a particular scenario. For example, if you're investigating someone's office, when you first walk in, the Game Master might tell you that there is something odd about a particular picture on the wall, or about the person's desk that you are investigating, which can help you focus in on the important elements in a particular scene. You will also gain access to the Expeditious Inspection ability, which you can use as a free action once every 10 minutes to gain a Recall Knowledge Seek or Sense Motive check. While that may not seem very potent on the surface, bear in mind that free actions are relatively rare inside of the game, and being able to use a Recall Knowledge Seek or Sense Motive as a free action on your turn can be a huge boost to your overall action economy. For example, if you find yourself in an ambush, having access to a free action Seek could help you locate and respond to a threat much quicker. So overall, Empiricism doesn't have a heavy focus towards one particular aspect of the investigator, but it's a very flexible subclass on top of what is already a very flexible class, and I do think it could be quite potent. The third methodology that you can choose is Forensic Medicine. Now, I'll go ahead and say that many people online tend to refer to Forensic Medicine as the weakest option for the investigator, and I can understand where that argument is coming from, but I think it overlooks what is an interesting and still quite potent option for the investigator. You will gain training in the medicine skill, and you will gain 2 skill feats for free. One of them is Battle Medicine from the core rulebook, and the other one is Forensic Acumen from the Advanced Player's Guide. The Forensic Acumen skill feat is kind of the flavor of this particular subclass, allowing you to perform forensic examinations in about half of the normal time, and giving you pretty significant bonuses in trying to uncover the cause of death for a given creature. So if you enjoy the show CSI and would be interested in playing that style of character, the Forensic Acumen skill feat is going to allow you to get that exact play experience. And then, don't overlook the fact that you get Battle Medicine as a free skill feat. Battle Medicine is one of the most commonly recommended skill feats in Pathfinder 2e. You will see all kinds of advice out there saying you need at least one player in every group who has the Battle Medicine skill feat, and it is a very, very powerful skill feat, and the Forensic Medicine Investigator gets it for free and gets an upgraded version of Battle Medicine for free. First off, when you use Battle Medicine on an ally, you are allowed to use that ability on them again much quicker. The ability functionally recharges after an hour instead of after a day, And whenever you use the Battle Medicine feat, you're also going to restore more hit points than normal. A lot of people look down on this particular subclass because they think, oh, all you really get is a skill training and 2 skill feats, but one of those skill feats is very powerful in terms of the overall metagame, and the other skill feat is just on point for the flavor of this particular style of play, so I still feel like this is a pretty good subclass. The final methodology for the Investigator is the Interrogation Methodology, which reminds me a lot of the scenes that you see in crime dramas or police shows or that kind of things, where an investigator has a suspect in a room and they're trying to get information out of the suspect one way or another. The interrogation methodology is all about knowing how to gain people's trust and knowing how to get information from people, even if it's information that they would normally be very reserved about passing along. The interrogation methodology is going to allow you to be trained in the diplomacy skill, and it's also going to give you access to the No Cause for Alarm skill feat. The No Cause for Alarm skill feat is an interesting support skill feat that allows you to spend 2 actions to try to reduce the level of panic in a 10-foot radius around you. You attempt a check, and on a success, you lower creatures' frightened value by 1. On a critical success, you lower their frightened value by 2. In a fight, this could be a powerful way to remove some debilitating debuffs from your team. You also modify your Pursue a Lead ability as an investigator, and you gain the ability to pursue a lead while engaging in conversation. So if you're talking to someone about a mystery or a crime, you could pick up on a particular element of that conversation and designate that as one of your leads. Now you still have all of the normal limitations associated with the Pursue a Lead ability, such as you need to be in conversation for at least 1 minute in order to use the ability, but it does broaden the opportunities that you have to use Pursue a Lead. Finally, the interrogation methodology is going to add another unique action to the class. It gives you the pointed question action, which is arguably one of my favorite things in the entire Investigator class. You pick a target and ask them a very specific question while making a diplomacy check against their will DC. If you succeed or critically succeed, your target must answer the question. Now, they can attempt to lie to you, but as part of the pointed question ability, you gain bonuses to detect any lies they might try to throw your way. So this is an excellent ability that allows you to dig towards a particular clue, towards a particular question that you're trying to deal with as an investigator. So those are all of the methodologies available to the investigator, and again, you pick up your methodology, your subclass, at first level, so this is even more complexity on top of an already complex class. The investigator has access to at least 4 unique actions or reactions, and then, based on their subclass, probably picks up another 1 or 2 other special actions that they can use. So there's a lot of complexity here that you have to wrap your head around right at first level when you start playing this class. But okay, let's set the complexity conversation aside and let's focus in on the fun part of the conversation. What are the strengths of the Investigator class? Now I imagine there's a lot of nuance that you could dig into on this question, but I want to focus on 3 particular strengths that are associated with playing an Investigator. Skills, roleplay support, and flexibility or action economy. Let's start with skills. The Investigator is an intelligence-based class, and as I mentioned in the very first section of this video, the fact that this is an intelligence-based class means that you are naturally going to be very strong in the skills department. You start the game trained in society, plus 1 skill from your methodology, plus 4 more skills on top of that, plus whatever skills you get from your background, and then a number of trained skills equal to your intelligence modifier, which is probably going to be plus 3 or plus 4, meaning that the typical investigator is going to be starting the game with somewhere around 11 to 13 trained skills. Or, translating that to a big picture perspective, if you're playing an investigator, you are very likely to begin the game trained in approximately 2/3 of the skills inside of the game, and by the end game, it is very likely that you're going to be trained in most, if not all, of the skills inside of the game. That's impressive. Also, you will gain bonus skill feats, kind of like the rogue does, although you are a little bit limited here. Your bonus skill feats are going to be restricted to intelligence, wisdom, or charisma-based skills, or whatever your bonus skill from your methodology is. So you don't have quite the skill feat diversity that a rogue would have, but you still have a ton of extra skill feats, allowing you to get more mileage out of your skills. So as an investigator, if there's something you want to do with skills in Pathfinder 2e, you've probably got the skill support to do it. But as I've mentioned several times throughout this video, the Investigator is pushed at least slightly in the direction of more role-play oriented skills. You see an emphasis on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma-based skills. You see methodologies such as Interrogation, which are all about role-play opportunities, and even Alchemical Sciences, Empiricism, and Forensic Medicine still is going to offer some unique role-playing moments and support. One of the really great things about the Investigator class, and one of the things that I will admit I've had my eyes open to, is just how well Paizo is supporting roleplay with the mechanics of the Investigator class. Here's a crime scene, and here are specific mechanics that are going to make you very effective in that crime scene, and then here are some more specific mechanics that are going to make you and your team better at pursuing the suspect related to that crime. Oh, here's a mystery, and here's some free recall knowledges to help you solve that mystery. I have to admit, I'm very impressed. Paizo has done a good job of making mechanics that support roleplay well and in an interesting fashion. Investigator is a complex class, but I will admit the mechanics and options that Paizo gives us for the Investigator do allow for some more complex nuance and interesting storytelling. So I will say that there is some fantastic roleplay support associated with the Investigator. But for the last strength of the Investigator, I want to talk about another thing that surprised me, and this may be the most mechanically interesting thing that Paizo has done with the Investigator class. They have made the Investigator remarkably flexible, especially in terms of the Investigator's action economy. Okay, so this may sound a little weird. The Investigator gets to use their third action first. That makes perfect sense, right? But okay, let's do a meta-analysis of Pathfinder 2e real quick. One of the best and simultaneously most challenging aspects of 2e is the action economy, correct? Every turn on your turn, you get 3 actions, 1 reaction, and use them as you see fit. People love Pathfinder 2e's action economy, but one of the big challenges of 2e's action economy is that third action. Getting your mileage out of that third action can be difficult in a lot of situations. If you've been making multiple attacks, well, your attack penalty is going to be so high that that third action is usually pray for a 20. I have seen a lot of instances in my Pathfinder 2e games where even very skilled players struggle to get a lot of value out of that third action, and there are a lot of situations where it feels like the third action kinda gets wasted. Well, think about the Devise a Stratagem ability. You point at someone, come up with a plan, roll a dice, and find out exactly how that plan is going to play out, and then you decide if you want to follow through on that plan. It's kind of like they took that third action that often feels hard to use, and they just stuck it on the front of the round, and you get to throw out your Devise a Stratagem ability and then respond with some extra knowledge about how your round is going to go. Like I mentioned when I discussed Devise a Stratagem, it's kind of like insurance against wasting actions. oh, are we up against a particularly dangerous monster or a particularly dangerous foe? Well, would it be better for me to attack the foe head on or deal with their minions? Hold on, let's make a plan. Huh, it looks like I should deal with the minions this round, because I don't think that's going to work on the big boss. Investigators have an incredible amount of flexibility with how they manage their rounds, and it's one of the most unique takes on flexible action economy in a game notorious for flexible action economy. I've got to say, I'm impressed with the investigators' ability to manipulate the round to their advantage. And by the way, think about some of the other conversations we've been having. Investigators start the game with at least 4, maybe 5 or 6 unique actions or reactions that they can use, and then when you casually stroll through the different class feats available to the investigator, you'll find more unique actions, unique reactions that they can use. Investigators have a ton of flexibility in how they approach and use the action economy of this game, and it's really unique compared to a lot of classes. I will admit I overlooked this aspect of the investigator, but spending some time deep diving the investigator has really impressed me with this is one of the best classes for manipulating what you can do inside of your turn and inside of the game. Bravo, Paizo. But that doesn't mean that the investigator doesn't have some weaknesses, and we need to go ahead and talk about those as well. And I do think that the biggest weakness of the investigator is probably one of the things that I've been saying about the investigator for a while now. The investigator is one of those classes that really feels like it needs to be the right game, or you need to have the right game master if you really want to get the mileage out of this class. A lot of the abilities like pursue a lead, clue in, they are often very contingent on game master interpretation of what qualifies as a lead, what qualifies as a clue, what skills are appropriate to use in this particular instance. Now, in the right game, these abilities are amazing. But it's also easy to imagine games where an investigator is not going to get very much use out of them at all. And if so much of your class abilities are bound up in these unique actions and reactions, if you are playing a game where those unique actions and reactions aren't going to come up, it will lead to a frustrating play experience. And so I do think Investigator is very much a class where you need to have the right game, or at very least the right game master. I would strongly recommend talking to your game master if you're thinking about playing an investigator. Say, this is my concept, this is what I want to do, these are the abilities I'm thinking about taking. Will this fit with your story? Or how do you interpret these abilities? Do you think I will get some use out of them? Now, talking to your game master is always a good idea when it comes to character creation, but with the investigator, I feel like this is magnified to a much more significant degree than with other character concepts. I feel like most players could roll up a fighter and drop it into the vast majority of Pathfinder 2e games and have a reasonably solid experience. Same thing with a rogue, a cleric, a wizard, or most of the other classes. They may not be a perfect fit, but it will usually be comfortable. But the investigator's playstyle is so nuanced that you really want to have that conversation with your storyteller to make sure it's going to fit, or at very least, to make sure that the game master is going to put some work in to help it fit. I will be perfectly honest, if I was a storyteller, I would want to know ahead of time that someone was playing an investigator, because I would need to think through the implications of pursue a lead, clue in, devise a stratagem, all of these different abilities, so I could make sure that they would be well supported inside of the game. Also, there is another specific weakness of the investigator class that I think is worth highlighting. The investigator is a martial class that's going to have one good attack per round. I'm sorry, that's just kind of the truth. Devise a stratagem turns the investigator's approach to combat into a very land one good hit style of play. Think about it. You pick a target, you focus on that target. Maybe you spend an action, maybe it's a free action, but either way, you're focusing on one particular target and trying to land a very decisive blow against them. And you get some nice bonuses to do that. You get to use your intelligence modifier to hit. You get to add your strategic strike precision damage. That one hit's going to be pretty good. But any follow-up hits, you're not going to be using intelligence. You're going to be using your strength or dex, which will almost certainly be lower. And you've been using agile or finesse weapons to land these hits, which means your damage output with secondary or tertiary attacks is often going to be pretty low. Each round, you kind of got one good hit, and then your contributions to combat are probably going to be focused on areas that aren't dealing a lot of damage after that. Okay, so that brings us to the last question for this video, which is, how can I get the most out of an investigator if I choose to play one? Now, I think a lot of the pieces of advice that are relevant to getting a lot out of the investigator we've already talked about. Number one, I cannot emphasize this enough, is talk to your game master beforehand. Tell them you want to play an investigator, tell them what your character concept is, what build you're going for. Communicate well with your game master and with the other players in your party. That's going to go a long way to really getting the most out of the investigator in play. Another very obvious strength of the investigator and something that you really want to emphasize is your skills. You are naturally a very skilled character, and you have a lot of push towards actions like recall knowledge or towards social skills. Use those things. Find ways to get the most out of those particular options, because that's a really core strength of the class. However, the thing I really want to talk about on getting the most out of the investigator class is that concept of flexibility. It really surprised me how much flexibility in combat is a core part of the investigator play experience, and I think if you want to get a lot out of the class, you have to know how to be really flexible when it comes to using the class inside of the game. To quote Captain Cold from the TV show Flash, there's only 4 rules. Have a plan, execute the plan, expect the plan to go off the rails, and throw away the plan. You have the powerful ability to set a plan into motion, but you also have the powerful ability to recognize that that plan's not going to work and readjust and take a different route inside of combat. And being willing to embrace that flexibility, being willing to very actively adjust what you're going to do, sometimes rapidly, is a key component of really getting the most out of this class. The investigator sits in a very unique mechanical niche in terms of their ability to play with the action economy of this game, and if you can really learn that action economy and use that action economy, I think this class has a ton of potential at the table. But that was a lot of information, so I think the time has come to turn that conversation over to you. What are your thoughts on the investigator class, and do you agree with my analysis? Are there strengths of the investigator class that I overlooked, or are there weaknesses that I failed to mention? And what advice would you give to someone who wants to get the most out of the investigator class? Are you like me? Was investigator a class that you were very hesitant about? And has this analysis given you a new perspective on the class? Or do you feel like there's some aspect of the class that I'm still missing? Let me know in the comments down below. As I've said, I love your insights and your interactions, and you all have taught me a lot about this class, and I'm sure that I've got more to learn. Don't forget all the YouTube stuff. If you enjoyed this video, like it, share it, subscribe to the channel. Check out my free Discord and my Patreon, linked in the video description. And check out this video sponsor, ArcKnight. I've got a link to their website in the video description as well. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.